What's the best physical combat skill in Oblivion Remastered, and what's the fastest way to level it up to level 100 fast? This video is going to cover blade, blunt, marksmanship, and the hand-to-hand combat skills. But before you level up your skills, make sure you are picking the correct attributes when you level up to maximize your damage, since they did change in the remastered version. Now, to increase the damage you deal with daggers, short swords, and marksmanship, you'll need to level up your agility attribute, and the amount of damage you do caps out at 100 agility, so there's no point in fortifying it beyond 100. While the strength attribute now boosts the damage you deal with blunt weapons, so both one-handed axes, maces, but also two-handed warhammers and battle axes. It also boosts the damage you deal with two-handed claymores and one-handed longswords as well. And obviously leveling up your strength will also boost your carry weight and your maximum health, so it is pretty efficient for a warrior to be using those types of weapons. Now, before we get into which skills are worth it, let's talk about how to level up your skills fast. Because combat skills are one of the slowest skills to level in Oblivion Remastered, because you get experience based on how many times you hit the enemy. It doesn't matter how much damage you're dealing, it's just how quickly you can hit them. So for that reason, it's recommended that you pick the combat skill you want as your major skill at the start of the game. This gives you an experience boost and makes them faster to level up. But thankfully, you can level up your combat skills AFK. Just come to the south of the Imperial City and then go directly east of the city of Breville. Just down this river to the east, you're going to find Periite Shrine. And you can come here at level 1, because at this location, as long as you don't start the quest, you'll find several NPCs frozen in time that are all invincible. So you can just start attacking them to level up all your skills. And attacking them isn't considered to be a crime, so they're effectively skill training dummies. There are, however, a couple of things you need to be aware of. You will level up your skills faster if you use a faster attacking weapon, so a one-handed axe for blunt or a dagger for blade, fist for unarmed, and I'll talk about the bow in a moment. It is also possible to knock the enemies unconscious. They won't actually die, but they'll just fall over and get back up again, and then you can continue to train on them, but this obviously wastes a few seconds. So we can solve it by turning up the difficulty to master so you deal less damage, but still every attack's going to level up your skill, so it doesn't actually affect how quickly you level up. It just turns the enemies into bullet sponges. You'll notice that the NPCs will move back slowly as you attack them, so you'll want to position them so that they get stuck by the statue of Periite just over here. Then they won't move because their backs are against a wall. It's also faster to attack with normal attacks to level up. We now need to level up our marksmanship skill. Once he hits the base of the statue, you can then fire him up against the wall to force him to stay there. At this point, you can just use an auto clicker and go AFK and level up your archery skill. You can also crouch to level up your sneak skill at the same time, but if you want to do the combat training method AFK, just hold down the attack button on your controller or mouse, then you can just leave it taped down and go to bed. This is almost as efficient as wearing my new merch inspired by the wild fever dream that is Oblivion. Like this Khajiit, who is clearly innocent of his crimes. And these are just the t-shirts. There's several different designs, stickers, and merch you can check out from the link below. But is hand-to-hand combat worth it? Sadly, it's pretty terrible, but weirdly playable and kind of fun. To get the max amount of damage with hand-to-hand combat, you'll need to get level 100 hand-to-hand skill and strength attribute. But once you've maxed out these two stats, there's no way to get more damage, even if you fortify your skills. And since you can't enchant your hands to boost your damage further, you're very limited by your damage output. However, the hand-to-hand perks are actually pretty good at making you very survivable, because your unarmed attacks will reduce the enemy's stamina, meaning they can't attack you back as often. And at level 25, your power attacks deal 20% more damage, and you'll make enemies recoil when you block their attacks with your fists, leaving an opening for you to respond by punching them back. But things get much better at level 50 because now your power attacks have a chance to disarm your opponents. This means that you can pick up their weapons, which drastically reduces their damage output, but obviously you can't disarm creatures. Then at level 75 and 100, your attacks deal even more stamina damage, which again stops enemies from blocking and attacking you back in general, which increases your survivability. Overall though, the hand-to-hand skill is the worst combat skill in Oblivion Remastered. Not to say you can't use it and have fun, but it is not great. Next though, we need to talk about the blunt skill. which boosts the damage of all warhammers, battle axes, war axes, and maces in the game. But the blunt perks actually turn us into an absolute tank. However, later in the game, they do become somewhat redundant, so let's take a little look. At level 25, your power attacks deal 20% more damage, and your weapons are 20% more durable. This is obviously great. But then at level 50, your power attacks now give you a 15% shield for 5 seconds. This will get you up to the 85 physical resistance cap, but the effects will become redundant once you reach level 100 heavy or light armor skill and you have a good armor set, because you can't go beyond that 85% cap. And then at level 75, regular attacks have a 20% chance to apply silence for 10 seconds, which basically stops mages dealing any damage once you actually reach them. It's also fantastic against bosses and creatures that cast spells. This ability alone on Master difficulty makes Blunt worth considering. But then at level 100, you get a 30% physical damage shield for 10 seconds after you do a power attack. And again, this stacks with your armor rating, enchantments, or spells to easily reach the 85% physical damage resistance. But you can reach that without this ability, which is why it feels kind of redundant as an effect. Which is why overall I actually recommend using Blade. You see, the Blade skill affects your daggers, short, long swords, and also one- and two-handed bladed weapons. And the best part about the Blade skill is the perks, because at level 25, your power attacks deal 20% more damage, and your weapons are 20% more durable, which is nice. But at level 50, power attacks now apply a 15% weakness to normal weapons for 5 seconds. So if you power attack and then do a few light attacks, you'll do even more damage to enemies. Then at level 75, regular attacks now have a 20% chance to make the target bleed for 10 seconds. Then at level 100, your power attacks now apply a 30% weakness to normal weapons, and this is an incredible buff to have as a perk, since it basically boosts your damage by 30% after a power attack. So the Blade skill is the best melee skill in the game, due to its ability to give enemies weakness to physical attacks, which gives you even more damage. And don't forget that the sneak attacks with daggers give you 8 times damage, which can't be achieved with any other weapon. But obviously, if you're playing a melee character build, you'll want to know that if you enchant your weapons, you can deal over 12,000 damage a hit, which actually makes Master difficulty extremely easy. And you can check out my guide on how to do that, linked down below in the description. But is the Marksman skill worth using in Oblivion Remastered? Well, it's actually stupidly powerful. Since both your bow and arrows can be enchanted, you can hit 3 times sneak attack damage, and you can simply walk away from enemies while damaging them, which is pretty busted because they can't really do anything in response if you have a high athletic skill. The perks make it even better though, because at level 25, you'll no longer consume stamina while drawing the bow, which means you can use it to sprint and run away. And at level 50, you can zoom in while aiming, which just makes it easier to hit longer shots. But then finally at level 75, your arrows have a 10% chance to paralyze the target for 5 whole seconds. And then at level 100, it goes to a 25% chance to paralyze them. And this is game-breakingly powerful, because if you paralyze an enemy, they'll fall over, get paralyzed for 5 seconds, and then it takes them another 3 seconds or so to actually stand up and run towards you again. And in that time, you probably already fired a few more arrows into them and potentially paralyze them again, because you can just carry on paralyzing them over and over. You can even get arrows that have a 100% chance to paralyze the enemy. And you can check out my archer guide if you want to know where to get those and also build the perfect archer for yourself.